Thank you, Ali. On what day would you like to have the reservation?
I was just looking to do a reservation tomorrow. I'm a bit confused though. We have 13 people coming. Is it possible to make a booking at 6 p.m. for 13 people tomorrow?
I can only create reservations for a maximum of 10 guests. Would you like to adjust the number of guests to 10 or less for your reservation at 6 p.m. tomorrow?
Yeah, okay, we can do 8. Let's do 8.
Great. So just to confirm, you'd like a reservation for 8 guests tomorrow at 6 p.m. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Can you speak up a bit? I can't hear you.
Sure. Just to confirm, you want a reservation for 8 guests tomorrow at 6 p.m. Is everything correct?
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Hey, my name's Ali Mohammed and I've made thousands of dollars selling these voice AI solutions for businesses. And this video, whether you're looking to get into the AI space going into 2025, or you're just looking to build one of your own personal voice AI assistants, this video is absolutely for you. We're going to be going over the best settings to actually create one of these voice AI assistants so you can get something similar to the one we just showed earlier on. So if you're looking forward to that, please do stick around to the end of the video and let's get straight into it. I have a fresh account here and the voice provider we're going to be using is Vapi. Vapi, I believe, is probably one of the best voice AI providers. That's a no-code, low-code tool solution. So all you have to do is I'm just in a fresh Google account right here and we're just going to type Vapi in the top. Cool. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So yeah, you'll see this voice AI Vapi. We'll just click this one. And brilliant. So I'm on a fresh account right now. So this is going to be a step-by-step with anyone who's never seen this platform before. And it's really cool. So voice AI for developers. Vapi lets developers build, test, and deploy voice agents in minutes rather than months. And you can go ahead and actually talk to one of them right here. I'm not going to, but you can absolutely do that. So what you want to do here is you want to go up to where it says dashboard. You want to click dashboard, and in later videos, we'll probably go through the other links, but they're not that important right now. We're going to go through dashboard. And I think it's going to prompt you to sign into your account. So you can sign in using your Google, GitHub, or Discord. I don't know why you would use these two, but we're going to sign in using Google. So let's see if we can do that. Cool. So I've just made this test account. Excellent. And yeah, brilliant. So help us understand your needs. You can kind of just demo, kind of just make this whatever you want. Doesn't really matter. Actually, I'll probably, probably just do like, just do that. Beautiful. Doesn't really matter too much. Appreciate you completing this. You can now close this window. Brilliant. So this is the Vapi dashboard and there's a lot of stuff going on here. So we're going to zoom in here and just have a look at this top left section. So you have the overview, which is going to be empty for anyone who's just starting using this platform because you don't actually have any data from any of your previous calls. You have the actual platform itself. So this is what we're going to be focusing on primarily. And yeah, let's get straight into it. So we're going to go into assistance. This is where we're going to be spending the primary amount of time in. And you go to assistance, you'll see here that if you've never created an assistant before, you'll get this screen. If you have, it'll already show you the dashboard. But assistants are voice AI chatbots used for integrations into your applications. You can fully configure them to your business needs, and we support all major models providers. So you can go ahead and create your assistant or view the documentation. We're not going to view the documentation today. We might do that in a later video if you want some more in-depth understanding of how these work. But just for the simplicities of this video and anyone who's looking to get into the space, we'll just create an assistant. So choose a template. There's a few templates that they've given us here, just as a little quick start. So we have the appointment setter, the customer support, inbound Q&A, and game NPC. So if anyone's watched my previous video, you kind of remember that I mentioned some use cases for voice AI, and you can kind of see some of them here right now. But we're going to actually go with blank template. I never use these quick starters just because I like to have that full customization to my own agents. So we're going to call this demo. And yeah, this can be adjusted anytime. This assistant name is purely for your own visibility, just so you can make sure you categorize your agents accordingly. We'll go blank template and we'll click create. Beautiful. So there's a lot of stuff that's just popped up on the screen and yeah, it can look a little overwhelming, but we're going to go through it very briefly. And I actually created this little PowerPoint here to kind of give you guys better visualization and something that you guys can actually keep. So hopefully I put this in the link in the description, just as something to reference if you ever want to find the best settings for your AI agents. But we're going to actually go through this step by step and kind of just break it down very slowly. So the cost and latency breakdown. If you had a look on here, obviously the numbers vary because we haven't actually done anything with this, but you can see here that there's a cost variable and there's a latency variable. Now, the very interesting thing with voice AI as compared to a typical chatbot or ChatGPT, for example, is that these charge you based on the minute of usage. So this value per minute is essentially every minute that you use the voice AI, whatever it's for, it'll charge you this amount. And I think this amount is in USD. I think it's in USD. I actually don't remember. I think it's in USD. And then, yeah, you can see down here, this is actually like the kind of the different variables that add up to actually accumulate. This is $0.11. And yeah, we kind of see here on the top that there's five different variables, but only 4 of them are being used in terms of accumulating the cost. So you can see here that there's the Vapi fixed cost. And if we actually go back to the dashboard, it's the exact same here. We'll see Vapi fixed cost. So Vapi always has a fixed cost. Okay, yeah, it is in USD. So Vapi always has a fixed cost of 0.05 cents per minute, just for using the platform, and that takes up a majority of that overall cost. Then you actually have the model, so the AI model that you're using for the voice agent. And that's going to vary in cost depending on the model you're using and the actual length of your prompt. And we're going to get into that in a bit more detail later. And then Cartesia. So Cartesia, I believe, is, okay, yeah, Cartesia, this is just the actual voice. So Cartesia is just a voice provider, but this can vary depending on the voice provider you use, which I'm going to go into in a bit more depth later in the video. But this is essentially the fixed cost for using a voice provider, so the actual voice of the AI. So yeah, looks like there's basically, there is a 4th variable here, this pink one called deepgram, and we're going to go into that a bit later, but essentially this pink variable is the transcriber. So in the previous video, we actually went over like how these voice AI systems work, and the transcriber is essentially that first step in being able to take the input from the user and transcribe it for the AI. So yeah, there's a little fixed cost there, and that's pretty much how the cost is broken down. And yeah, typically, like, I've worked with prompts that are really, really long and models that are pretty strong, and the most I've seen in cost is like 0.13 cents per minute. Like it is pretty cheap, and yeah, it's not like exponential accumulation in cost depending on like your prompt size or how complex the actual voice AI system is. It generally hovers around like 0.1 cents a minute. So that's pretty good. Latency is very, very important. So this basically calculates the fixed time before your AI will respond to a user. And the aim of the game is to essentially get your latency down as much as possible without obviously compromising the actual capabilities of the voice AI. And so this is pretty basic. It's just 3 variables, but we're going to go back into here because there is a bit more nuance to it. And latency is, yeah, it's broken down into 4 variables. So latency does not have a Vapi fixed cost. I'm actually not the pen, I might actually get my laser pointer. So latency does not have a fixed cost. As we can see, it has a fixed cost for the actual transcriber. It has a fixed cost for the model. It has a really big fixed cost for the actual voice, and we'll get into that a bit later. And then there's another one here called web. Right, web. What is web? Well, if you look here, I'm sorry I'm going back and forth quite a bit, but hopefully now it's getting a bit more familiar. If you can see here, you have the mode called web. And we're not going to touch on this just yet. This is going to be a bit later on in the video, but for the purposes of this video, I guess not this video, but for this section, you can just imagine web being calling this AI through the web, and we're just going to use that for now until we get into a bit more detail later. So web is, yeah, there's 100 millisecond latency, and yeah, obviously you can hover over these to see the actual latency in unit. So we can see here that the model 3.5 has a base latency of 250. the Cartesia, which is our voice provider, which we're going to change later. This is just the default voice provider. There's 250, and then the actual mode is 100 for the web latency. And obviously this latency it's kind of like an average. So obviously every time you call or talk to these voice AI agents, you're not always going to get that 0.06 second latency. It can vary slightly, but we're going to be showing you later on in this video how to actually decrease that latency to the point where it sounds like you're basically talking to a real human. And it's pretty incredible stuff. So yeah, I think that's everything for this. And just a little demonstrator here. I think, yeah, cost and latency breakdown continued. Finding the balance between cost and latency is key in successfully delivering these voice AI solutions and getting real value, depending on the model and the model provider. So obviously we saw that we were using OpenAI. You can obviously, if I actually go back here, you can see down here, you probably noticed the provider, OpenAI. Vapi has a lot of different providers. Like you have OpenAI, you have Anthropic, which is the Claude models, you have Google, you have Grok. Like there's so many different providers. So please do feel free to use whatever provider you want. But I found the best results using OpenAI just because I found the best results using OpenAI. I might try out Anthropic and give that a shot and see how that goes. But OpenAI has been really good for me. So yeah, depending on the model provider, the cost and latency of each model can vary significantly, and your ability as an AI engineer and someone who wants to master the skill is to be able to find that balance between computational efficiency and compute time. So obviously you want a model that's fast, but you also want a model that's smart enough to actually do what you want it to do, right? So it's always this constant battle between finding that perfect amount of latency that is not too long and unrealistic, but also finding just enough effectiveness in the voice AI to actually deliver real value. So I actually went ahead and broke down the actual cost and latency for each of the models, and it's pretty interesting. So real quick, I want to go back into here, and we didn't actually click on this model section. So this model, we benchmark, like, it's not that important, but essentially this is where you choose the model. So if anyone's familiar with OpenAI, you'll know that they have the 3.5, they have the 4.0 mini, they have the 4.0. They recently brought out their 0.1, I think back in September, and then they have the real time. And you kind of see these like little variables next to it, right? So this one, you can kind of see here is the latency, and this is the cost. So earlier when we were talking about the actual fixed cost of the model, this is essentially where that plays in. So 3.5 Turbo has a fixed cost of 0.01 and a latency of 250 milliseconds, which we can see down here. So it has a cost of 0.01 and a latency of 250 milliseconds. If we go back to this graph, we can see here that I've basically sorted this for cost per minute and the latency in seconds. And they pretty much all hover around the same, like 0.1 to 0.2, except the 4.0 real-time cluster. We're going to get into detail on that later, but let's focus on the cost per minute for OpenAI models. So the 4.0 cluster is really damn good. It's like 0.05 cost per minute. And if we actually look at the latency is like 0.5 seconds. Now, obviously, you probably don't, depending on the use case of your actual voice AI system, you probably don't need to use a 4.0 cluster. For most of my projects, I usually tend to use 4.0 mini or a real-time model, depending on the cost and stuff. But my general rule of thumb is to pretty much just go with the 4.0 mini and essentially just prompt it well enough to execute efficiently. And then, yeah, you see here the 4.0 real-time. So if anyone who's not fully familiar, GPT-4o cluster and GPT-4o real-time. Real-time is essentially using, I don't want to get too detailed into this, but 4o real-time is essentially a lot quicker because it uses a real-time API. And I don't want to get too much into APIs in this video just because it is a little bit of a more detailed topic, but I'm going to try and keep this broad. 4o real-time, way faster response time, but it is way more costly and you'll probably never use it right now. 4.0 mini is probably the way to go. And yeah, that's pretty much that. You can review this in your own time, but this is just a little cost and latency breakdown. And I've generally found 4.0 mini to be the best one. So that is that. So we're actually going to change this to 4.0 mini cluster. And yeah, 4.0 mini cluster, or you can use the 4.0 mini real-time cluster. I would just go 4.0 mini because it is less latency, right? Knowledge base. So depending on the client that you're working for, they could have a lot of documentation, a lot of details about their company that you may not necessarily want to put inside of the prompt. And this is essentially where the knowledge base comes in. So I don't want to get too detailed into it, but essentially, basically how you prompt your AI. So let's say, for example, in your knowledge base, you have a bunch of details about let's do a restaurant example because it's simple. You have a bunch of details about the recipes and daily specials for that restaurant. And if someone asks the voice AI, what are the daily specials? You can prompt the voice AI to essentially respond back by searching the knowledge base for that information, and then it'll come back and actually give that information. Granted, searching through the knowledge base does add latency. So most of the time, a general rule of thumb is to pretty much just keep everything inside of the prompt. You don't really want to use the knowledge base that much unless there's a lot of documentation. But yeah, it just adds extra latency and it's not that efficient. So I never use it personally. Temperature. So temperature is used to control the randomness of your output. So when you set it higher, you'll get random outputs. When you set it lower, you'll actually get more values that are deterministic. So this essentially measures like how random and spontaneous your responses are going to be. If you ever use ChatGPT and you've ever asked it to write you something, you'll notice that it uses a lot of emotional words. It uses a lot of random words. And that's essentially because it has a high temperature. For voice AIs, when you're building these out for businesses, you don't want a high temperature. You want it to be very monotone, I guess. Not monotone, but you want it to be very consistent in responses. So I always keep this at 0.3. Max tokens. So this is actually the max number of words or tokens that the voice AI will essentially use per speech. So depending on the use case and how long you want these voice AIs to be on a call for, you can increase this, you can decrease this, but for the sake of this example, we'll keep at 250 tokens. And I want to keep in mind that this is per response. This isn't the entire conversation. This is per response. Detect emotion. So this enables the property to detect users' emotion. I always keep this off just because you don't really need it with these systems and it adds extra latency, which is not great. All right, let's actually get into the model. So hopefully that all makes sense. And then obviously up here, we have the actual ID of the assistant. And we're going to get into this in a later video. Well, I guess, yeah, it depends. But let's actually get into the model prompt. So what are we actually going to use this for? So we have two options here. We have the first message and we have the system prompt. The first message is essentially the first thing that the AI is going to say. So we can say, hello. How are you doing? Oh, hello. How can I help you today? Beautiful. So we're actually going to do this for a restaurant. And honestly, I'm probably just going to grab that template that I used previously. But essentially in the system prompt, you basically just prompt the AI to do what you want it to do. And let me know if you want me to make a prompting guide in a separate video, because prompting is very, very important when you're building out these voice AI solutions, because with voice AI, it's a lot more spontaneous and you want to make sure your prompt is basically refined to the point that for any scenario, for any use case, it'll respond accurately. So I'm going to quickly cut to the prompt. Okay, beautiful. So I just went ahead and copied a prompt that I had previously, and I'll actually leave this down in the description as well if anyone wants it. So this is essentially for a restaurant, just because it's a pretty simple example. So hi, this is Santorini Restaurant. Sophie speaking, how can I help you? Obviously, you can change this to whoever you want, and we'll actually go into more detail in the voice section. But essentially your prompt is the persona, so you are Sophie, a voice AI assistant at Santorini Restaurant, the task, so what you actually want the AI to do, and then give it all your restaurant information. So the location, cuisine type, amenities, parking for guests, today's specials. And this is basically what I was talking about before. You can actually swap this out with the knowledge base for each day of the week. Price range, hours of operation, contact information, dress code, alcohol license, dietary options, reservations. We haven't We're not going to go into reservations yet, just because there is some external backend to actually make it work. But in a separate video, we're going to go into a lot more detail of actually making appointments with these voice AI solutions. Reservation creation. So this is how you'd actually create the reservation if we were to do that. And then actually ending the call. So when it's time, use the end call function. We're going to go into this a bit later. But for right now, with these voice AI solutions, specifically for these voice AI solutions, you want to create functions to allow the voice AI to do certain things. So in this case, we created an end call function. We're going to do that a bit later on, you'll see. But we essentially want to create an end call function that allows the voice AI to end the call when it's pretty much time to end the call. And there's also one for transferring the call. So if the person on the other side wants to transfer the call to a manager, then the AI can use this function to transfer the call to a certain number. Rules and limitations. So you can just put a bunch of stuff in here. And yeah, that's pretty much prompt. Let me know if you want me to make a prompt engineering video, because I absolutely can. I think prompting is super important, especially if you're looking to get into the space and really create value with these AI models. And essentially just extract as much value out of these models as humanly possible. So I think that's everything for this, and always click publish. This is essentially saving your AI. I don't think this saves automatically, so you absolutely want to click publish every time you make a change and just make it a habit. But yeah, that was pretty much model. And I think, yeah, we'll go into transcriber. So transcription, this is essentially the area where we will configure how the input of the user is being translated for the AI. And so I kind of want to go back here real quick. So yeah, this is what we're talking about: tokens, temperature, detecting motion, system prompt, can be used to configure. We'll keep this in the description if you guys want to look at it. But transcription, so voice AI transcription. These are the pretty much essentials that I go with. So you have your provider, which is DeepGram. I think they're the best transcription provider and actually turning your speech into text for the AI. Language, we're going to do English, but you'll see later on we can change this. And then the actual model is Nova to phone call. So what does any of this mean? Let's go back. So transcription provider. So you have a few providers here. You have DeepGram, TalkScriber, this one, Gladia, Assembly AI, and Asia. I think that's how you pronounce it. So we're going to I always go DeepGram. DeepGram is personally my favorite. Language, so this is English. You can go English Australia. You can pretty much choose any language, to be honest. And we'll actually show you later on with the voice provider, you can actually do multilingual, and it doesn't have to just be restricted to one language. But for this purpose, we can just go English. Model, so this will always default to Nova 2, but I always go with phone call. I think phone call, I've seen significantly better results using phone call as compared to Nova 2. And it makes sense, right? Like you're doing a phone call, you probably want to use the model that's designed for a phone call. And then you have this little option down here. It's kind of hidden behind this dock and supports, but background denoising enabled. So filter background noise while the user is talking. I actually turn this on. This one is really good because you want to make sure that if someone were talking to this voice AI and there was a lot of background noise, that the AI is able to only extract the voice and not the background noise as well. And this is super important because a lot of the times in a realistic scenario, you're going to have people on the phone with this voice AI that aren't in super quiet rooms. They could be outside, they could be in the car, and you want to just try and compress that background noise as much as possible. So I always keep this on. I think this is great. I don't notice that much of a difference in the latency, and if anything, I think the compromise in latency, but you get a way more effective output because the transcription of the actual text from the user is better. I think that's way more worth it. So that's transcriber. That's pretty much everything you need. Voice. So this one is a little bigger. So voice configuration. Choose from the list of voices or sync your voice library if you aren't able to find your voice in the dropdown. If you still face any errors, blah, blah, blah. So this is what I was talking about earlier, the provider. So we can see up here, there's a yellow section, Cartesia. This is essentially what I was talking about, your voice provider. Now, I did mention in my previous video, I absolutely love 11 Labs. I think 11 Labs is probably one of the best voice providers just because of their options for latency and also their options for a voice, and we'll see that later on. So you can see here there's a lot of different providers. There's also DeepGram, OpenAI, but I tend 11 Labs is the most realistic and the least amount of latency, which we'll see quickly. Beautiful. So it doesn't actually let me choose a model. Okay, cool. Beautiful. If this for some reason is like blacked out and you can't open up this drop down, just change your voice provider and it should work. Yeah, beautiful. So 11 Labs, you can also add your own voice ID. If you have your own voice using 11 Labs, you can do that as well. I might make a video on that as well, but it's not that great, I think. I don't know, I haven't used it in a few months, but this is essentially where you want to create your voice. So if we go back to the model, we can see that we've essentially created someone called Sophie. So we probably want this to be a female, right? So we'll probably just go here, email. Let me just go see if there actually is a Sophie, right? No, there isn't. We'll just go restaurant. Nah, okay. We'll go, I can't even spell today. Yeah, okay, we'll go, I don't even know, man. Yeah, so we'll go Sasha. Even though we made Sophie, we'll just change this just in case. Sasha. Beautiful. Publish. Voice model must be, oh yeah, we haven't actually configured the model yet, so we can't save it. If you get this error, just make sure that you filled everything out here. We haven't, and this is really important. So the actual model of 11 Labs. So 11 Labs has different voice models, and depending on which one you choose, it can significantly vary the latency of your actual AI. So we're going to go down to model, and model is super important. So 11 Labs has different voice models, and depending on which one you choose, it can vary the latency significantly. And there's quite a few options here. So we have 11 multilingual v2, 11 turbo v2, 11 turbo v2.5, and then these are their more recent ones, which is 11 flash and 11 flash 2.5. I would highly recommend using, I use version 2. I find 2.5 ends up making the voice sound a little less realistic. I tend to go with Flash v2. So Flash is actually just a new model that 11 Labs produced, and it's really damn fast. So our newest model, Flash, generates speech in 75 milliseconds. When I was building these agents out for clients, I would always go with 11 Turbo v2 just because the Flash wasn't available. And you can actually see here, the latency is 900 milliseconds using Turbo, but with Flash, it's 575 milliseconds, which is absolutely insane. Like, that is ridiculously cheap. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, that's really damn fast. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So additional configuration, so additional settings for your voice assistant. Background sound. So you can actually enable background sound for your voice AI. So it's not just this static figure that you're talking to. And this is really good for that dead time between the user speaking and the voice AI generating a response. So obviously with this latency, there's going to be a period of time where when you ask the AI a question, it could be like half a second or so. But when you ask the AI a question, you don't want it to just be dead silent. It is nice to have some sort of background noise to kind of filter out all that dead noise and make it sound more realistic. So background sound office has been really good. I tend to keep this just as blank. Punctuation boundaries, I just keep this as blank as well. So yeah, these are considered valid boundaries limit. Yeah, I just keep this blank. Filter injection, so this determines whether fillers are injected into the model before inputting. I tend to keep this off just because I haven't found it that effective and it does add latency. Back channeling enabled, so make the bot say words like, yeah. I've tested this, it is not good because sometimes the agent will essentially say this while you're speaking and it comes off as really unrealistic and it's just not great. So I keep this off. So stability and clarity plus similarity, this is pretty important. So depending on the actual voice you choose, we're actually going to go through this. I think I wrote something in here, but yeah, voice configuration. So this is pretty much what I said before. Or was it Sarah? I think Sarah was the one I used. Okay, wait, hold on. Okay, let me try Sarah. Yeah, I don't know why I did Flash v2.5. I mean, I don't really know what the difference is. I always go V2 though. I think V2 is just better, and I've just found it to sound more realistic, so I'll probably end up changing this. 11 Labs has proven to be one of the best voice providers, yeah. And obviously, depending on the context of your agent, it's your decision as to the voice you choose. So yeah, depending on the context of your agent, choose the voice accordingly. So additional configuration. So this was essentially what we're talking about here with stability and clarity. And I'll probably just do this because it looks nicer, but stability is always set to default 0.5. And there's obviously a scaler from 0 to 1. If you decrease your stability, obviously your voice AI is going to have more artifacts or more defects in its speech, but it can sound way more expressive, right? So there's a bit of a compromise here. You can obviously get less stability to make your AI sound more realistic, more expressionful, but keep in mind that there could be times where it kind of cuts out or is static, and that can come off as really unrealistic. On the other hand though, if you make it more stable, it's going to sound more monotone, but there's going to be less defects because it's stable. So you want to find that nice balance. I found 0.4 to be really good. And obviously depending on the voice as well, each voice is more expressive than the next. So obviously play around with that, but I think 0.4 is a really good base. Clarity plus similarity. So obviously if you decrease the clarity, low values are recommended if background artifacts are present. I think what I wrote here. So yeah, this also ranges from 0.1 on the scale. Lower values are recommended if there are background artifacts. You don't ever have background artifacts, to be honest. So I always keep this in the higher spectrum where the voice AI is more clear in what it's saying. And it's able to, this is also an interesting one. So it's able to adjust to find the optimal value. High enhanced boost overall voice clarity. Yeah, here it is. Target speaker similarity. So I always tend to keep this on the higher side, and I found 0.7 to be the best. Generally, sometimes if you go way too high, it ends up sounding monotone and it's not great. So 0.7 is the best in my personal opinion. Style exaggeration, I keep this off because most of the voices actually have their own emphasis on their speech, so that's perfectly fine. Optimize streaming latency, I tend to keep that off, and then use speaker boost. I keep these off just because it adds extra latency and I don't see it being a good compromise in effectiveness. Whew, so that was a big one. All right. Next up, we have functions. So tools. Tools are a way for you to enable your voice bots to perform certain actions and tasks during the call. This is an entirely different section and deserves its own video. So I think in the next video, I'm actually going to be going over tool calling, but this is essentially where you would create external tools to trigger the voice AI to do something you want. So this could be, for example, creating a reservation. You could create a tool called reservation and have some sort of back-end automation actually trigger every time someone wants to make a reservation. And we're going to go into that in a later video because it deserves its entirely own video, and this video is already way too long. So we're going to leave this blank because we're not going to use any tools for this video. Predefined functions. So these are pre-built functions. So pretty much just like tools, but they're pre-built inside of Vapi. And yeah, we have the end call function. So if we actually go back here, this is essentially what I was talking about inside of the prompt, where we have the end call function. So that is essentially this. You always want this on because, I mean, it makes sense. It's pretty logical, right? You don't want this AI to be on the call forever. So let's say the user forgets to end the call. The AI isn't going to end the call if you have this off. So you're going to be burning through a lot of money without even realizing. So it's always important to enable the end call function, as this allows the AI system to end the call. And that's also why we use GPT-4o minis, because it has a way better understanding of when to end the call, and it ends up saving you a lot of money. Dial keypad, you're probably never going to use this. I mean, depending on the complexity of the business, you're probably never going to use this. Forwarding phone number, so you can actually like put the manager phone number or even your own phone number. So let's say I'm talking to the voice AI assistant. I say, hey, I want to speak to the manager. Then obviously you can configure in your prompt, hey, if the user wants to speak to the manager, use the forward call function and call this number. I'm going to leave this blank just because we're not going to forward this phone call to anyone. And end call phrases. So this is essentially what the agent is going to say at the end of a call, which helps a lot with realism as well. So you can always say goodbye or have a great day. Oh, goodbye. Have a great day. and then obviously end this with a comma so it knows that this is the end of the actual phrase. And yeah, this is pretty much what the AI will say at the end of a call, and adds a way more realism as opposed to the AI just ending the call, right? It helps a lot. Custom functions, so I believe this has been disabled. So yeah, it's been disabled for tools. So this is what Vapi used to have to actually essentially call your functions or your tools, same thing. But they've disabled that, so it doesn't really matter. We'll go publish real quick. Excellent. Advanced. So it's not too advanced. We're going to go through this quite quickly, but privacy section. So this section allows you to configure the privacy for your assistant, and they actually have one for HIPAA compliance. So if you're working with, if you have to consider HIPAA compliance, then there is an option to do that, where if it's enabled, no logs, recordings, or transcripts will be stored. But for the purposes of this demonstration, we actually want to keep the logs, recordings, and transcripts so we can look back and analyze it. So we're going to keep this off. Audio recording, record the conversation with the assistant. I would absolutely turn this on, because when you're actually going through testing these systems before deploying it for a business or for yourself, you want to be able to look through the call recording and figure out where the voice AI made hiccups, where you can improve, how it responded to certain user questions. So it's really good feedback. So I'd keep that on. Video recording. This is only possible on web calls. Yeah, turn this off, because 99.9% of the time you're actually going to be calling through a phone number and not the web. So I would just tend to keep this on. So start speaking. Before we get into this section, I actually want to come back to this mode. So this entire time we've actually kept the mode as web, and earlier on the video I said that the web is essentially what you call the voice AI through. But you can see here there's two other options. There's Twilio and there's Vonage. Twilio is essentially a phone number provider that you can connect into Vapi, and we'll probably go into that in a later, I'll probably go into that in this video just because it'll be quick, but we're going to essentially use Twilio for all of our phone numbers, and we'll actually go into that in a bit later on. But you can see here that the latency is almost doubled, which is ridiculous. But yeah, it's because we're making calls through a phone number, which is obviously going to add more latency than the web. Actually, I wonder if, yeah, it doesn't really change anything. Yeah, no. Overall though, 1 second delay is not terrible. This used to be way larger. And obviously, I think you can change the model as well. So right now we have 300 milliseconds. You can go to 3.5, which is 250, but yeah, I don't really see that much of a difference. And using 4.0 mini as compared to 3.5 is way better. So start speaking plan. This is the plan for the assistant should start speaking. So wait seconds. This is how long the assistant waits before speaking. Now, obviously, depending on your own latency, you need to vary this accordingly. But because we already have like a 1 second latency, we kind of just want to put this at 0, right? We want this agent to respond back as fast as possible, but not too fast, obviously, that it cuts the user off. But because we have that 1 second latency, like we'll be able to hear the entire speech of the user before we even say anything. So in this case, we're going to put it at 0. Smart endpointing, enable for accurate speech endpoint detection. I tend to keep this off just because with lower models, it doesn't seem to be that effective. And I think it just adds extra latency, so I don't really do that. On punctuation settings, minimum seconds to wait after transcription ending with punctuation. So this is essentially going back to the transcriber. So when you actually give speech into the phone, when that audio is transcribed, it'll obviously grammatize and punctuate it accordingly. And this will essentially check the transcript to figure out when you stop speaking. So it'll have like a full stop. And when it recognizes that you've essentially stopped speaking, then it'll configure this setting to essentially trigger the voice AI to speak. Same thing with wait seconds. I tend to just keep this as 0. It's the exact same thing. On no punctuation settings, so minimum seconds to wait after transcription ending without punctuation. So this could essentially just be the user, maybe he's saying something and he's trying to think of the next word to say. Obviously in a scenario where, for example, you could ask the user, what day or what time would you like to book your reservation? And the user could go there saying, I don't, right? He could be thinking for a while. And obviously you don't want the voice AI to essentially cut him off while he's thinking. It sounds unrealistic. So I tend to keep this at around 1 second. Yeah, 1 second. It depends on your latency, of course. But I tend to keep this around like 1 second just to make sure I'm waiting for the user to fully respond before I give my response. On number seconds, so minimum seconds to wait after transcription ending with a number. So if the user is giving you a number, could be like a phone number, reservation number, then it'll essentially wait however many seconds after it gives a number. Exact same thing with words, so I tend to just keep this to 0. Right, aim of the game is to reduce this latency as much as possible. Okay, click publish. Brilliant. Stop speaking plan. So this is the plan for when the assistant should stop talking. So this is the number of words that the customer has to say before the assistant will stop talking. I've noticed in a lot of calls that some customers will, essentially when you're talking to the user, the customer could respond saying, yeah, that sounds right. Like you could just be agreeing with the agent. And depending on how you've configured this, if you have 0 number of words, anything the user says will cut off the voice agent, which can be really unrealistic and really annoying at times. If let's say you're conversating with the user and the user's just like simply agreeing with something, right? You don't want the AI to stop talking if the user's agreeing. You want it to stop talking if the user's saying a new sentence. So I always tend to keep this around 3 words. So when the AI detects the user has said 3 words, it's a good logical indicator that, hey, the user is trying to form a new sentence, as opposed to just agreeing with something like a 1 word, like yeah, okay, that sort of thing. Voice seconds, so this is the number of seconds the customer has to speak before the assistant stops talking. Just number of seconds the customer has to speak before the assistant stops talking. This one I keep to about 0, just again with that latency. Obviously, when the customer stops talking, you want the assistant to respond back as fast as possible. And yeah, we already have a 1 second delay, so keeping that as low as possible is the best. Back off seconds, this is the seconds to wait before the assistant will start talking after being interrupted. I actually keep this at 1, just because if you put this at 0, if you interrupt the voice AI, it'll just continue speaking. It'll just continue speaking. So I always keep this at 1, and these are the absolute best settings that I've found. And trust me, I've tested every single setting here. These are the best settings that I've found, just because where this technology is right now, there's still a little bit of latency. So obviously having that waiting response and waiting time reduced as much as possible helps a lot. Call timeout settings, so configure when the assistant should end a call based on silence or duration. How long to wait before a call is automatically ended due to inactivity. So I tend to keep this around 30 seconds, just because if you have it too low, let's say that you're on a call with a user and the user says, oh, I forgot my credit card for whatever reason, let me come back and get it. Obviously, you don't want to end the call when the user is gone to get his credit card, right? You want to have some sort of buffer so that the AI assistant knows that, hey, don't end the call too early when you're still trying to get information from the user, but also don't end it too late because you end up eating through a lot of money. So yeah, 30 to 40, I usually just put this at 40. I mean, obviously it depends on the actual use case, but I tend to keep this on 40. Probably for like a restaurant, you want to put it at like 60. Yeah, I would probably just keep it at 60 for a restaurant, but obviously this varies depending on your industry. Maximum duration, so this is how long the call will last for. And I tend to just keep this at the default, just to make sure that, how long is this? This is like, it's a while, but yeah, this is just how long the entire call is going to go for. So once it hits 1800 seconds, the call is just going to end. And this helps in very, very small scenarios where the AI isn't able to end the call. So just so the call doesn't go infinitely, you have this as sort of a backup. So like, hey, the AI has failed to end the call, but that's okay. Once it hits 1800 seconds, it'll end the call. Yeah, you might lose a bit of money, but it's a good fail safe. Messaging, so message configuration for the messages that are sent to and from the assistant. So this is a URL Vapi will use to communicate messages via HTTP post request. Again, this is more so back-end analyzation of the conversation, which we're going to get into in a later video, just because this one's already way too long. But it's essentially the same thing. It's essentially linked to tools and how we're able to get a lot of that back-end system automation. So I tend to just keep this as blank for now, and we'll obviously go into this in a lot more detail, because this is a pretty complex topic for beginners, and we're going to make a more advanced video on this. Client messages, so these are all the messages that are sent to the client. Just keep this as is. It's not that important for right now. Obviously, yeah, you want to make sure you have the conversation update, function call, hang, metadata, speech update, same thing. Server messages. Same thing, just keep it as the default. We're going to play around with this in a later video. Voicemail. So depending on the use case, if you're using inbound, you probably don't want a voicemail because the person is calling you. But if you're doing outbound, you probably want to have a voicemail message in case they don't respond. Just being like, hey, can you please call me back? Obviously, we're creating an inbound agent where we're calling the assistant, so we wouldn't have a voicemail. End call message. So this is a message that the assistant will say if the call is ended. So you can say goodbye, have a great day. Now, earlier on, we did actually, let me publish this. Earlier on, we did have something similar. So I want to quickly go over the difference. So end phrases will trigger the bot to end the call when spoken. This one is pretty much what the assistant will say if the call is ended. So this one relates more to the actual message. Actually, I don't really know that much of a difference how this really works. I think this one more so depends on the actual function, the actual tool you're calling. So if you're calling a tool, this will probably be the end call message that it says. If you're just using the default Vapi without calling a tool, I think it just uses this one. So I think that's the difference. Idle messages. Yeah, so if the user just isn't speaking for whatever reason, you can kind of configure this to say like, is there anything else I can help you with? That one's pretty good. Max idle messages that can be spoken during a call. I tend to just keep these as is, not that important. Click publish. Beautiful. And then we have analysis. So this is essentially all the analysis of the calls. And I always just keep this as blank just because a lot of the analysis we do using back-end automation, which we'll go into in a later video. So I tend to just keep this as blank just because we don't use the actual built-in end of call reports or analysis inside of Vapi. And yeah, there we go. That is our agent. Fully done. Fully complete. Now, obviously, for Twilio, we're going to quickly go into the phone number. So there's obviously this section here for phone numbers, and phone numbers, assistants are able to be connected to the phone number for calls. You can import from Twilio, Vonage, or buy one directly from Vapi. So you can actually buy a phone number directly from Vapi, or you can import your own using Twilio or Vonage. Now, obviously you have to put in your card details to even buy a phone number. And let me just quickly do that real quick. Beautiful. So just quickly, when you actually click the please add card details, you'll be redirected to actually enter your billing details in here. And you'll actually see here on the side, you'll have your daily usage, you'll have your monthly usage, and you have wallet credits. So Vapi is really nice. They actually give you a free $10 to use. So you don't actually get charged initially. And the great thing about Vapi is, unlike subscription models, you actually get paid as you go. So you could not even use this for like months and you won't get paid. You get paid for as much as you use it, which I think is amazing. So yeah, they give you $10 free. So all you have to do is just put in your card details. Just in case you go over that $10, they'll charge you. And so let's say you're on the phone with someone and it just cuts off randomly because you've used your $10 and you haven't actually put in your card details. It can be quite annoying. So put in your card details, you won't get charged for it. You only get charged if you use this $10, which could take a very long time. So quickly do that. I'll just quickly do that right now and we'll head back to the phone numbers. Beautiful. So I just put in my card details and we're going to go back to the phone number. So yeah, now you can see here, you can actually buy a number directly from Vapi. So you can put in your area code. Adding a number costs $2 per month. So you'll be charged 1.8 for this usage. I tend to not use numbers from Vapi just because I like having that flexibility. But import phone number from Twilio. So if you've never done this before, if you actually go here onto Google and you type Twilio, see Twilio is American cloud communications company. So this is essentially a phone provider, which is really cool. So we're actually going to log in. Actually, I don't even have a login, do I? Yeah, you have to make an account. So quickly make an account and then we'll come back. Beautiful. So we've just logged into Twilio. You're going to have to do a few. You're going to have to authenticate your account using your phone number and actually log in. But once you get to the screen, you'll actually see here that you're on a trial and you actually get $15 free. So what you can do with that is, depending on where you're from, obviously, you can buy a phone number. So I'm in Australia. So we're going to go to Australia, phone number. And if you're in the United States or anywhere else, you can do phone numbers, same thing. For Australia, we're going to do phone numbers, manage, and then you can buy a number. So we're going to click buy a number. And real quick, actually, we'll actually go to active numbers. You'll see here that yeah, we don't have any active numbers. So we can buy a new Twilio number, which is what we want to do. And it'll load a bunch of numbers that we can buy. Oh, that's weird. Hey, country, I gotta change this to Australia. Obviously, depending on the country you're from, use your native country phone number so it doesn't come off spammy or sketchy. And it's really important here to make sure that, I was gonna say that it is important to make sure that you have SMS enabled, because in case you want to do follow-ups with any people for the reservations or for clients or appointments, you want to be able to automate a message. So I want to quickly just check. Oh yeah, here it is. Beautiful. So we actually want voice, we want SMS, fax and MMS we don't really want. So we just want voice and SMS. So this will show us all the numbers that have voice and SMS provided. It's going to cost a little bit more, but you have plenty of money here. So I think that's fine. Sorry, something went wrong. That's not great. What went wrong? Try again. Okay, there we go. We had to enable these two. So these are a bunch of numbers that I can buy that have voice and SMS capabilities. And you essentially go here and you just buy a number, right? I've already bought a number, so I'm not going to do this. I'll quickly cut to my actual phone number. Okay, so I've actually already bought a phone number, so I'm not going to go through that process, but essentially what's going to happen is you're going to buy the phone number, and you're obviously going to put that number into here. Make sure you have your actual code. So you'll be asked to put in your number here, and then you're going to be given, I don't want that to show up, but you're going to be given your Twilio account SID and your Twilio auth token. So the way you actually find these is if we go back here, if we go back to Twilio home, once this loads, yeah, you can click on your first Twilio account. It's probably be the only one you have. Beautiful. So you see here your account info, your account SID, and your authentication token. Just copy those into Vapi, and you should be good to go. So yeah, you copy those into Vapi, and then you'll have your phone number linked. And then you'll see your phone number pop up here. Okay, beautiful. So I've imported my number, and you'll get a unique ID for your number here. And then down here, you'll have inbound settings. So you can assign an assistant to the phone number so that whenever someone calls this phone number, the assistant will automatically be assigned to the call. So this is your phone number. It should pop up here. And then the assistants. So if you click on this, you'll actually see all the assistants that you've created. And then we have our demo assistant. So we want to link this phone number to our demo assistant just so that every time we call this number, it'll redirect to that assistant. No squads available, we don't need to worry about that. Fallback destinations, set a fallback destination for inbound calls when the assistant or squad is unavailable. This is always going to be active 24/7, so you can just leave that as is. I mean, you can put in your own phone number if you want, but it tends to work perfectly fine. And then outbound, so you can assign an outbound phone number. We're not going to be dealing with outbound in this video, so we're just going to leave that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So if we go back to the assistant, I think we're all good to go. I think we're all good to go. Obviously, change your mode to Twilio, click publish, and then I'm going to quickly cut to my other camera, and we're actually going to give this a call and see how it works. So, okay, cool. Let's give this voice agent a call using the same number that we imported, and yeah, let's see how it goes.
Hi, this is Santorini Restaurant. Sasha speaking. How can I help you?
Hey, I was just wondering if I could make a reservation for tomorrow.
Sure, I can help you with that. May I have your name, please?
My name's Ali Mohammed.
Thank you, Ali. On what day would you like to have the reservation?
I was just looking to do a reservation tomorrow. I'm a bit confused though. We have 13 people coming. Is it possible to make a booking at 6 p.m. for 13 people tomorrow?
I can only create reservations for a maximum of 10 guests. Would you like to adjust the number of guests to 10 or less for your reservation at 6 p.m. tomorrow?
Yeah, okay, we can do 8. Let's do 8.
Great. So just to confirm, you'd like a reservation for 8 guests tomorrow at 6 p.m. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Can you speak up a bit? I can't hear you.
Sure. Just to confirm, you want a reservation for 8 guests tomorrow at 6 p.m. Is everything correct?
Yeah, that sounds perfect. Where are you guys located? Is there any parking as well?
We're located at 123 Mediterranean Way, Seaside City, CA 90210, near the oceanfront with a view of the harbor. We have a private free parking lot with 20 spots available throughout the day. Now let me finalize your reservation for 8 guests tomorrow at 6 p.m. One moment, please. I've now created the reservation for you. Looking forward to seeing you. Is there anything else I can help you with?
No, that should be good, thank you. Looking forward to it. All right, goodbye. You too, bye. And then boom, it just ended the call just like that. That was the live call. I actually did, however, go back and change in the advanced settings, I did actually go back and change back into the advanced settings. I did actually change the start and speak time just because I noticed it was responding way too quickly. Like the latency on this is borderline not even noticeable. I've actually had to increase it to 0.8 just because it was responding way too quickly. But yeah, that's pretty much how you build one of these systems for yourself. Bit of a longer video today, but this is pretty much the absolute go-to settings for building out these voice AI solutions. Let me know down in the comments of what you would want me to build next. We can do some back-end automations as well, get that reservation booking actually working. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. And yeah, thank you so much. Have a great day.